Hi friends, I welcome you all in this exciting training session being conducted at TNV Academy. In this session, we will discuss about clause 7.5.3 of ISO 27001-2013, which talks about the concept of control of documented information. So let's get going and start our discussion. Let me explain you that what we will be covering in this chapter first. In this session, we will be discussing about subclause 7.5.3 of ISO 27001-2013, which talks about the control of all documented information related to information security management system. Coming to the reference clause, within the standard or the other standards which can be useful for this chapter are: as far as clause 7.5.3 of ISO 27001-2013 is concerned, it does not take reference from any other standard or clause. It has its own small requirements which they ask from an organization to fulfill while aiming towards the successful implementation of its information security management system. The external references for this chapter. Now, if we talk about the external references that we need to know for better understanding of the clause 7.5.3, then you should have an updated version, standard copy of ISO 22300-2018 with you. ISO 22300-2018 has definitions for several technical technologies that are used under different clauses of ISO 27001-2018. So we advise you that you should keep an updated copy of the standard for your ready reference. Now, what we are going to learn from this chapter. At the end of the chapter, you will be able to understand, point number 1, how documented information is controlled within the organization for access. Point number 2, how the documented information is protected. Point 3, what measures does the organization take for distribution, access, and retrieval of information. Point 4, what measures are taken for storage, preservation, and disposition of the documented information. The clause 7.5.3 of ISO 27001-2013 says that the organization should manage documented information throughout its life cycle and makes it available where and when needed. By control of documented information, we mean that the organization must have measures in place through which it ensures that the information is distributed, shared, accessed, and used by only those people who are the real users of it. By ensuring these controls, the organization sets up the parameters for the protection of vital information so that its essence and meaning remains the same forever and is not exposed to any kind of threat which could lead to disastrous results of its information security management system. Once approved, the documented information is communicated to its intended audience. The documented information is out there where and when it is needed, while preserving its integrity, confidentiality, and relevance throughout the entire life cycle. All of the documented information should be classified in accordance with the organization's classification scheme. The documented information should be protected and handled in accordance with its classification level. Now let's discuss the requirements of clause 7.5.3 in detail. What are the requirements of the clause of this standard? The clause 7.5.3 of ISO 27001-2013 states that documented information required by the information security management system and by this international standard shall be controlled to ensure, point 1, it is available and suitable for use where and when it is needed. Point number 2, it is adequately protected. Examples from loss of confidentiality, improper use, or loss of integrity. For the control of documented information, the organization shall address the following activities as applicable. Number 1, distribution, access, retrieval, and use. Storage and preservation, including the preservation of legibility, Control of changes, examples are like version control and retention and disposition. The documented information of external origin determined by the organization to be necessary for the planning and operation of the information security management system shall be identified as appropriate and controlled. Here it is important note, access implies a decision regarding the permission to view the documented information only, or the permission and authority to view and change the documented information, etc. These requirements stated above are very straightforward and all applies to the protection of the vital information within the organization. Documented information should be distributed and made available to authorized interested parties. For this, the organization should establish who are the relevant interested parties for every documented information or groups of documented information, and therefore the means to use for distribution, access, retrieval and use. Examples, an internet website with appropriate access control mechanisms. The distribution should match any requirements associated with protecting and handling of classified information. In addition to this, the organization should establish the acceptable retention period for documented information consistent with its intended validity and other relevant requirements. It means there should be a time frame defined which says that the said information will be legitimate till the time frame decided and will no longer be in use once it is over. The organization should make sure that information is legible throughout its retention period. Examples are using formats which will be read by available software or verifying that paper isn't corrupted. The organization should establish what to try to do with documented information after its retention period has been expired. It means that how the information which is no longer in use and has crossed its retention period will be disposed by the organization. Disposal of such information is vital, as if not done properly can lead to harmful results such as leak of vital information to sources that are not meant to know about it. The organization should also manage documented information of external origin. Examples from customers, the partners, the suppliers, the regulatory bodies, etc. Documented information on this activity and its outcome is mandatory only within the firm and to the extent the organization determines as necessary for the effectiveness of its management system. Friends, we have now come to the conclusion of this segment. Hope you are clear about the requirements of clause 7.5.3. Let's move on and discuss the other important sections of this session. Mandatory documents and retention of documents. As per clause 7.5.3 of ISO 27001:2013, the organization does not need to maintain any mandatory document about the control of documented information. However, for its internal use, they can keep a record for the same for their reference. Now coming to the practicing writing non-conformity under this clause 7.5.3, I recommend you to please have a look on screen where you can see a sample NC. I leave it up to you. You can read it, you can refer it, and you can try to understand various components of this NC. Last but not least, now let's understand the common mistakes done by auditors during the audits. The mistake number 1 is auditors ask irrelevant questions for the organization which does not relate with the organization to be audited. Mistake number 2 is sometimes auditors start thinking for the option, while auditors need to understand the client process and to decide if the client can achieve the result of the MSS through their own process. Mistake number 3 is auditors start consulting activities. Mistake number 4 is auditors start expecting document and records in clause where this may not be mandatory requirement. Mistake number 5, auditors asking for FSSAI license registration, asking for the GST registration, asking for the ROC registration, asking for the commencement of the business certificate, asking of PF, ESI registration certificate, which may not be relevant considering the nature of business organization is performing. So friends, now we have reached at the end of this session. Thank you and best wishes.